Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So, I've been broke and jobless before. There's every possibility that I'm going to be broke and jobless again. But I got to tell you, if it happens again, America is going to be in a bit of a different place, thanks to it being the digital age. Now, I don't know if you do any of these things, but the last time I was broke and jobless, what did I wind up doing? I wound up delivering pizzas. That was what I did. And that was clearly not a career move, and it was a humbling moment, that's to be sure. I'd been signed. I was in this band. We got a massive, massive record deal. We came to America from my native England, where I was growing up at the time, despite the fact that my family was in New York. I'd been in England for most of my life and got this massive record deal. Literally handed $1 million. And, well, we spent it on making a very expensive album, on expensive hotels, expensive tour buses, expensive crew members to carry our stuff from show to show. We had a great old time, and we lived a bit of the rock and roll high life. But that all came crashing down around us when one record label bought another record label, and somehow in this shuffle, our record label got dissolved. And so we were literally out on tour with a single that had just cracked its way to the bottom of the top of the charts. Like, I think we just charted at number 30 or something like that, and we were bulleted and on our way up, and everything seemed like it was going to work out great. And all of a sudden we got this call: hey, there's no record label, you got to bring the bus back. And, well, between record deal number 1 and record deal number 2, which we got probably about 6 months later, I was broke and jobless. Those checks that were coming from the record label on a regular basis to pay my daily expenses, which were absolutely nothing because I lived in hotels and on a tour bus, well, those stopped coming. And meanwhile, because I was sort of twiddling my thumbs, wondering what the band was going to do next in New York City, which is an expensive place to be, I needed a place to live, and I needed a way to pay for that place to live. New York's an expensive place, like I said, and so I needed to get a job quick smart. So what did I do? Like I said, it was a humbling moment because I wound up delivering pizzas. Several of the pizzas I delivered were to the gazillion-dollar recording facility where I'd made my album about 9 months to a year earlier. It was an interesting lesson in real-life economics for the young strip of a lad that I was. And look, I made it work. I made it happen. And that was the last time I was broke and jobless and in desperate need of finding work. And boy, did I have to hustle to get that job delivering pizzas. Like, that was difficult. And you know what's amazing? You know what's amazing about the digital age that we live in? If you have a skill or a resource or a will to work in America, you can work. As long as you can stay current on your cell phone bill, you can work. You don't even have to do that. You could scrounge Wi-Fi from Starbucks or wherever the hell the case may be. But this is one of the things that I love. If you have a resource, you can make money off of it. It's a beautiful free market purist thing. If you have a car, you can drive for Lyft, or you can drive for Uber, or you can drive for any one of the ride-sharing services that exist out there. If you have a home, or if you have a spare room, or if you're willing to let somebody sleep in your shed, or wherever the case may be, you can rent that thing out on Airbnb. If you have a skill, a task, or something like that you want to perform, you can put that up for sale on that website, Fiverr. Now, there's a bazillion of these websites. Oh, one of my favorite, the vast majority of my friends get mechanical things done to their car thanks to an app that lets mechanics just come to your place, do what needs to be done as long as it's, a small thing. They don't need to take it into a garage. They can do your brakes at your home. And, well, it's amazing. It gives a skilled mechanic who might be out of work an opportunity to work their trade. And that's a beautiful, like I said, pure free market thing. So if ever I'm broke and jobless again, I will have had significantly more options laid out in front of me than I did in the past. Or at least that's what I thought until a little while ago. Until I realized, oh no, this is America, where you don't get to move, breathe, or think without Uncle Scam wanting to take a piece of it. And you know what? I got to tell you, Uncle Scam does not necessarily always have the purest intentions when they want to go after you, when they want to restrict you, and they want to tax you into oblivion. No. Sometimes things are distinctly shady. And the reason I bring all this up is not because I'm picturing myself being unemployed anytime real soon, but look, This is the most significant change to happen to our economy. The digital age has made it super easy for those that want to work to find work. If you have a skill, if you have a little bit of elbow grease, if you're willing to do stuff for money, you can be a chooser. You no longer have to be desperate. You can have your choice of odd jobs that need being performed. You could drive, you could clean, you could do all of these things. If you're a mechanic, you can go ply your trade literally anywhere. It's an amazing thing. However, while I think this is an incredible and significant leap forward for you, me, all of us, when it comes to forging our own destinies, well, there's one incredibly shady councilman that is going after a piece of that. This is where you get the old libertarian adage. Government is when somebody takes your rights from you and then sells them back to you.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So I got to tell you, I'm super stoked. We're going to be talking to Kevin Martin, frontman of Candlebox, in just a little bit. When a band like Candlebox comes along and then stays the course for like 25 years, can still pack out houses wherever they go all over the country, well, that's an admirable thing, which is why I'm really stoked to talk to him. I mean, besides the fact that the guy's written some incredible songs that have been a big part of the soundtrack to all of our lives. Whenever you get a chance to, I don't know, meet somebody and find out what it was that's made him successful for an extended period of time, that to me is interesting. And I hope it's interesting to you, because I'm really looking forward to our chat with Kevin Martin from Candlebox in just a little bit. Right now, though, speaking of sustaining, speaking of being able to make your way in the world, speaking of being able to live, thrive, and survive, you know, I talked about this a bit before, but look, I've been broke and jobless in the past, and there's every possibility that I will be broke and jobless again. But you know, over the last couple of years, I've really thought that there's been a significant change in America with regard to the predicament of being broke and jobless. America has always been the land of opportunity. America has been the place where you can go, and if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and work, this is the idea, you can make your way in this world. And I don't know how true that's been in the past, but I started to feel like it was more true a couple of years ago when I noticed what was going on with digital technology. Now, last time I needed a job, man, I had to hustle my butt off and apply for all these different jobs and knock on all these different doors in an attempt to get what was eventually a pizza delivery boy job. Yes, as we talked about before. I'd gotten handed $1 million as part of a record contract. I went on tour, and then all of a sudden the record label went kablooey, and my manager was like, just sit tight. We're going to get you situated at another record label. And you know what? They were good on their word. They did exactly that, and we picked up. But there was like this 6-month gap where all of a sudden I had no income and I had to find a place to live. I'd been living in a tour bus and living in hotel rooms. I didn't have a bill. I didn't have a lease. I didn't have rent. I didn't have any of the above. And well, all of a sudden, real life and responsibility came crashing down around me. I needed to find a place to live, and I needed to find a place to pay, a way to pay for that place. So I hustled my butt off. Basically went door to door in a friend's borrowed car. And eventually, after, reading enough want ads on Craigslist and knocking on enough doors of businesses and applying for stuff, bear in mind, I was qualified to do absolutely nothing. My resume said lead singer in a band. How many people are stoked to do that? I remember, man, I went into a record store back when there were still record stores. It was a big one. It was like HMV or Tower Records or something like that. And I was like, this will be a natural fit for me. I'll be, the guy in the band that works at the record store. That makes sense. And I walked in, the guy was like, dude, I totally recognize you. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, there's your poster up on the wall. Yeah, actually, a lot of people bought your album. How can I help? I was like, actually, hit a bit of a bump in the road. This is awkward, but you wanna hire me? I could use a job. And they're like, wow, man, I love your band. I saw you play a little while ago. Weren't you at Roseland opening up for whoever the hell it was at the time? Yeah, I did play Roseland. I was so in there. And like, yeah, oh, man, love to help you. Love your record. Hope things pick back up for you, but we're not hiring right now. In fact, we just had to lay a couple people off. So I was qualified for nothing. As a guy in a band that had done marginally well, I was qualified for nothing. So I had to hustle and grind and knock on doors and apply to do all these things just so I could get a job delivering pizzas. Now, fast forward to the year 2018, and things are a little different. I'd had access to a car. I could have immediately started driving for Uber. I eventually wound up having an apartment. I could have leased a room in that apartment, no problem. Basically, it being New York City, I could have leased a room in the apartment on Airbnb, and I probably could have made the rest of my rent. I could have gone on Fiverr. I could have done graphic arts. I could have done freelance music production. I could have done all sorts of things. It's very, very easy to connect people with skills and people with the ability to work to people that need to make use of that skills and that willingness to expend a little elbow grease in 2018. Such was not the case just a few short years back when 10, 15 years ago, when I needed to find a way to live and survive. So anywho, I'm always of the mind that, and you know what, when things get too much, and look, I love what I do. I love hanging out with you. I love talking. I love sharing what we share every single day. It's the greatest, but there's lots of other parts that go along with this job. When I say this part of my day that I spend with you is the best part of my day, I really mean that. There's some other stuff that happens in the world of radio and entertainment in general, and in every job that can kind of get on top of you. And every now and then, I'm like, just F it. I'm going to quit. I'll just drive for Uber. Can't take it anymore. Ah! And then, I reality check myself and realize that I love hanging out with you and I don't want to give that up. But there's times where I've really felt that I've had a genuine option and a genuine out because, well, I don't have to hunt around for a job. I've got a car. I could work tomorrow. And that's a massive game changer. Now, as we were saying earlier, you would think that what with the economy having been somewhat challenged, us coming out of the single greatest recession since the Great Depression over the most recent years, that everybody could use another 0 or 2 at the end of their bank statement. You would think that the government would be all in favor of us being able to work when and how we want or decide or choose to work, especially when it's, legal and above board. No, not so much. Uncle Scam wants a piece of everything, and oftentimes it's not for the most scrupulous of reasons, as we discover when we look at the situation in Biloxi, Mississippi. What exactly is going on? It could happen to you. It could happen in your town. It could be right around the corner, and this is why I want to be on the lookout for it. We'll get into it next.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
So if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you probably picked up on the fact that I'm not necessarily politically super easy to pin down. Not necessarily a Republican, not necessarily a Democrat. And there's a reason for that. I'm not necessarily anything. I do not declare an allegiance to any particular party. I think that is, well, that's something that politicians want you and me to do because it requires them to not work as hard. They know if they can count on a knee-jerk reaction where someone's going to vote straight ticket anything, they can count on your vote and they can move along. They can hold their hand out, ask you for your campaign finance, and not really have to justify their actions so much. And that is exactly what they want. It involves answering less difficult questions if you're a politician when people don't declare an allegiance. And, well, I'm all about making politicians, the people that make their living off of our blood, sweat, and tears and our tax money, I'm all about making them answer questions. Hopefully, the tough ones. And so for that reason, I don't necessarily, like I said, pin myself down that way. And for that reason, I welcome viewpoints from all over the political spectrum. hopefully ones that are different than mine. I always feel like you're in a good place if you're talking to somebody that believes something different than you, because you're just about to learn something. If you're about to learn about someone's perspective that is different than yours, whether you disagree with it or agree with it, man, you're about to get a clear picture of why the world works the way it does, and that's valuable. There is little to no value in getting into an echo chamber of a room and screaming and shouting things that you believe to people that are going to parrot them back to you because they already believe them. Evangelizing to acquire is profitable for a lot of talk radio guys, but God, is it dull. So that's not my thing. And I, like I said, refuse to declare anything. Now, if you had to pick something that I am, I suppose there's a lot of libertarians that would tell you, based on everything that you say and everything that you seem to believe, you're clearly a libertarian. Why don't you join the Libertarian Party? And you know what? If there's a possibility that that's true, but here's the thing about that. Being a libertarian, that's a moving target. You know, there's a lot of different shades to that. There's a lot of different hues of libertarianism. And, well, I find the problem with saying that you're a libertarian is that there's so many different interpretations of what that's about. I also find that if you say you're a libertarian, a bunch of pot-smoking rednecks are going to invite you over to the house so you can smoke pot and shoot AR-15s. And I do, nothing wrong with that. Just not my jam, yo. But there is one libertarian principle, or at least a principle that a lot of libertarians claim as being libertarian, which is this: the idea that the government is really there just taking your rights and then selling them back to you at a premium. You want to own a dog needs a home. Well, you're going to have to pay for an animal license for that dog. Now, that's perhaps a bad example. However, it's indicative of the way government can get in the way of you doing the things that you want to do and doing some good in this world too. I want to adopt this dog. Okay, but there's government process X, Y, and Z that you have to go through first, and you're going to have to pay us to do it. Now, I understand vetting people if they're going to own a pet or something of that nature, but the idea that you have to pay a licensing fee, that seems a little weird to me. There's a homeless dog. This homeless dog desperately needs a home. This homeless dog might even be euthanized by the state, and you're not letting someone who is willing to give it a home, its home, without charging them for it. Now, I know there's probably going to be all sorts of people that go, well, AD, the reason for the animal license is this. It's the principle of the thing that we're talking about. Hunting licenses. I know a guy who owns a lot of land. On this land, he hunts. It's his land. However, he's got to get a license to hunt on his land. Driver's licenses. I mean, obviously, you don't want idiots and ignoramuses endangering the lives of everybody, and it stands to reason that there should be some sort of degree of proficiency that you have to reach before you are legally allowed to drive. But are you following? All these things that you're perfectly capable of doing without a piece of paper from the government saying that you're doing them is, in many ways, so they can just, A, keep tabs on you, B, sell that right back to you. Marriage being an obvious one. Well, you get all these tax breaks if you're married. There's all these sort of different incentives to get married. And, well, hold on a second. This is my relationship with the person that I love the most in the world. What does Uncle Sam have to do with any of it? Well, yeah, but if you want to marry someone else, we must be a part of it. Why? Well, because that's what government does. That's a bit of a libertarian sentiment that I firmly cling on to and believe. Government likes to take a right from you and then sell it back to you at a premium. And, you and I were talking a little bit about this idea of it being that much easier for people to find work in the digital age thanks to apps. Your cell phone is now, if you've got a little bit of elbow grease and gumption and a willingness to work, and especially if you got a skill, your cell phone is now a connection to all sorts of work. You can go on something like Fiverr and perform all these tasks for $5 a pop. You can find work in your chosen field on your phone. You can utilize that extra room in your house. You can utilize that guest house that you've got if you want to rent it out through any number of Airbnb type things. And there's also like the ability to drive. You get blown out of your job, but you got a car. Well, guess what? You're going to be able to make rent that month because you can drive for Uber. You can drive for Lyft, probably. I think it depends on how new your car is and all of the above. But whatever the case may be, do you see what we're getting at here? In a day and age where we are still coming out of the greatest recession since the Great Depression, in a day and age where all of us could do to have a 0 or 2 more on that number at the end of our bank statement, you would think that the government would be all about making it easier for us to make our way in the world, thanks to things like this. Not so much. This is uber shady. There's this guy in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I bring it up because, well, as much as, are we on in Biloxi? I don't know. I know my music show's on in Biloxi. I'm not sure about this. But if you're listening in Biloxi, then maybe you've heard about this firsthand. If you're not listening in Biloxi, well, there's a very good chance that this could be coming for you. Biloxi, Mississippi councilman. He wants to go after Airbnb. Super shady. And here's the thing. Surprise, surprise. This guy's also the president of the Mississippi Hotel and Lodging Association and an area director for a hotel group. Oh, really? He's a Biloxi councilman, president, Kenny Glavin. He called a special meeting of the council this past week, just gone by, to discuss the issue of short-term rentals. Now, if you're like me, you're of the opinion, you got a room in your house, you want to rent it to someone, that's your business. Unless you're making enough money off of it to where it's taxable income. If you're clearing enough dollars per year over what it is you're paying on that part of your house, whether it be rent, whether it be mortgage payments, well, there's a certain amount of dollars that over which, I can't remember what it is. Uncle Scam wants a piece of it. But underneath that, that's the you problem. That's not their problem. You have a room, you want to rent it, should be the end of the story until you start making significant profit off of it, in which case you got to declare it because that's the world we live in. Not good enough. Not good enough for this guy. And like I said, he's a government official that is very clearly abusing his position because, well, this Biloxi councilman, guy called President Kenny Glavin, called this special meeting of the council last week to discuss the issue of these short-term rentals. And you can bet his jobs have nothing to do with his interest in short-term rentals, at least according to him. Like I said, he's a president of the Mississippi Hotel and Lodging Association, and he's the area director of hotel operations for a couple different places, Margaritaville Resort and the White House Hotel. But he assures us that there is no conflict, and he is in no way, shape, or form abusing his government position because his business is threatened by people with rooms to rent. No. He said that his intent of calling the meeting was to focus on tax collections that go to promoting the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So the tax collections that give your hotels free advertising, you now want people that decide to rent out their room through Airbnb to kick in to the free advertising for your hotel. I know it's a gross oversimplification of it, but if it smells fishy to you, there's a reason for that. And it's not just because it's going on the Gulf Coast. Glavin wants a strategy to ensure compliance from short-term rentals. Basically, he wants to go after you if you want to rent out your home. Like I said, government in America, big part of it, taking away your rights and selling them back to you. Renting a home for less than 30 days in Biloxi actually requires special permission from the city government. Yeah. You got to get permission from the city government before you even enter into the Airbnb aspect of, trying to turn your house into some income. And get this, landlords, you got to pay a hotel tax. You got to pay the state's hotel tax, and the city takes a slice of this. In residential areas zoned for single-family homes, short-term rentals are not even permitted at all. And look, I understand. If you're talking about what the idea of rentals versus homes that are owned does to the value of a property, well, that's a time-honored real estate thing. Generally speaking, if you, say, live in an apartment building, and you own that, let's say you own a condo unit, well, you got to jump through a certain number of hoops to be able to rent that condo out. I know because I have an apartment that I rented in Houston. and I had to get on a waiting list to rent it, even though I was being forced to transfer for some work stuff. The thing is, when you have too many rental units in a building, it negatively impacts the value of that building because, well, renters, they are there for, well, not necessarily as long of a time. They don't care about the property as much because they don't own it. Therefore, they won't take care of it the way an owner would. Therefore, a certain number of rentals in a building, that negatively impacts real estate values. That's one thing, and I get that. But guess what? That's a deal between the person that owns the apartment and the board of the building. This has little or nothing to do with government. In fact, nothing at all to do with government. So, the idea that in residential areas zoned for single-family homes, this guy doesn't want to permit short-term rentals at all, and he's a big deal in the hotel business. Well, this seems pretty clear, doesn't it? It seems like a massive, massive conflict of interests. He told the Sun-Herald that he knows most of the short-term rentals in the city are not complying with those rules, i.e. he's not getting his tax money. The Biloxi newspaper, the Sun-Herald reports a search of Airbnb, one of the most popular online sites, shows more than 300 short-term rental listings in the Biloxi area. Vacation Rental by Owner lists 372 condos in Biloxi, along with 140 houses, a bunch of cottages, and so on and so forth, with many of the listings overlapping in cities. Yeah, so there you go. They're going after vacation tax rentals, saying that, well, we need compliance. If hotels have to pay this, then, well, private homeowners have to as well. Yeah. But the bottom line is the guy has a vested financial interest in the hotel business around the area, and he knows people that own something and are trying to make a crust off of it, well, they're going to eat into that. Just as soon as we get some rights, just as soon as we get the ability to move, just as soon as we get the ability to make our way in this world without the encumbrance of government regulations. No, government regulations come into your home that much more. And it certainly appears that this guy is lobbying on behalf of a group that he represents while also serving office and pursuing policies to benefit that group. And if that seems unbelievably shady, and if that seems unbelievably not okay, and if that seems unbelievably un-American to you, well, there's a very, very good reason for that. And that's because it absolutely is. And this is why I say this all the time. People are so bent out of shape about government, federal government, the president, who's in charge, all this sort of high-minded stuff. But what a lot of folks don't realize is if you are going to be politically active, if you are going to get involved because you want to change the shape of your day, if you want to change the shape of your life, if you want to change your day-to-day existence, the best, most significant kind of government you can be involved in is that at a local level. Guys like this think they can fly under the radar, and you can't. You cannot let them.
Sometimes you just know you're done. You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me.
So, you and I will be talking to Kevin Martin of Candlebox in just a little bit. Always interested in talking to anybody that have managed to have a reasonable run at things. When someone's been successful, if you're like me, you love to kind of reach under the hood and find out what it is that's making that success tick. So I'm really stoked to be talking to Kevin Martin from Candlebox in just a little bit, and would be no matter what field he was in. But because he's written a whole bunch of songs that were a part of the soundtrack to all of our lives, even more so. Before that, though, I thought I'd dig into the mailbag a little bit. You've been hitting me up a lot with sort of questions, queries, comments, things of that nature. Keep them coming. Really enjoy them. At ADSXE, this is where you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ADSXE, or you can email me ad@iheartradio.com. But I got a question from the Instagram user Danger Barbie, who said, what made you choose to be a non-smoker, non-drinker? Now, you might have heard me talk about this a bit in the past, but what they're alluding to is the fact that I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't take drugs, I don't believe in casual sex, I don't do a lot of things that a lot of people find to be a lot of fun. And it works for me. I'm sort of, I guess, this old school punk rock term, straight edge. But I got to be honest with you. Straight edge was something I sort of started saying I was just because it made it easier for people to understand. When I decided I wasn't going to drink, smoke, take drugs, have casual sex, I was this kid in a band on the road, and everybody was expecting me to get blitzed out of my mind and have relations with literally every female that offered herself up. And, well, you know, you're a teenager in a band. There's a lot of that around. And I made a very clear decision that that wasn't for me. And a lot of guys in bands wouldn't understand it. They're like, have a drink with me. No, thank you. Have a drink with me. No, I don't drink. Have a drink with me. I really can't. Are you in recovery? No. What? I just don't want to. Like, you're drinking tonight. Rah! And it took a significant amount of protest for me to explain that, no, I wasn't going to be drinking, and I wish you would shut up about it. And then I realized that I was straight edge, and I realized that I'd been adhering to the principles. And this is what part of the reason I was reticent to say I'm straight edge is because, again, sort of like a political party. People want to label you in a certain way. And there's all sorts of versions of straight edge. And a lot of people say that you're not straight edge if you're not a vegan, which I was at the time. But, you know, you're not a true straight edge vegan if you're wearing sneakers that have leather on them. And there's a whole big complicated thing. And labels tend to be really sort of limiting. And I didn't want to do it. But I found that when I said, no, I'm straight edge, all these guys that were, you know, basically going, hey, would you like to join us for an evening of shooting heroin into your eyeball? Kind of left me alone. And I like that. So I sort of adopted the term straight edge, and, well, I'm pretty serious about it. You know, like, as much as I don't like the arguing about various things that are attached to the label of straight edge, it sums up how I want to go through life. And that is, well, by not drinking, by not smoking, by not participating in casual sex. You know, my life is simpler, easier to manage. However, there was a reason I stopped drinking. Because it didn't represent rebellion to me after a certain point. It represented conformity. I drank heavily from the ages of about way too young, 13 to 18 years old. And I grew up in England where the drinking age is 18. And, you know, I got to tell you, the moment it became legal, it lost a lot of its appeal. I don't know what it is. I've got some sort of genetic predisposition to tell the world and authority in general to kiss my ass. And, well, when you're underage and drinking, there was a certain amount of, getting away with it. Right on. And once that became legal, there went a lot of the appeal. And like I said, drinking became more about conformity than about rebellion to me on paper. And then there was the other thing. A lot of people, and I used to smoke a ton of pot too, a lot of people could do a bong rip and go be really, really productive. I was never one of those people. Whenever I smoked pot, it made my mind shatter into a million different directions, and I wound up feeling confused and oftentimes paranoid. I didn't like it, didn't care for it. Now, in this day and age of medicinal marijuana, if it ever comes down to a pain management thing, if I've got some sort of condition that requires me to be on pain medication, will I eat the marijuana cookie before I go on the hillbilly heroin that is Oxycontin? Darn skippy. I'm eating the cookie as opposed to taking the hillbilly heroin. However, that hasn't come up yet. And so, you know, smoking pot, not something I do. I just didn't find it good or creative. And you know what? I started in a band before I dropped all the drugs and alcohol. And I knew a lot of people that swore by the creative impetus of marijuana and drinking. And, well, I had my own studio. The band had their own studio. So I remember once I was like, I'm going to get blazed and I'm going to create music and I'm going to cash in on all this creativity and freedom of the mind that comes from smoking a joint. And I got to tell you, nothing. Got nothing. I wasn't inspired. It just took me way longer to do what I probably would have done anyway because I kept pressing the wrong button because, I was high. So I really didn't get anything out of it. But a big part of the other reason why I decided I wanted to stop drinking was because, well, I kind of felt really lousy every single day after I tied one on. A lot of people say, I've got a hangover, I've got a headache, this is miserable, hand me the Advil. For me, it was a much more intense and unpleasant thing where I would be like, oh my gosh, I feel like the world's caving in on me, I'm depressed, I'm worthless, everything is awful, and this is no good. I hate myself and I hate my life. Not a good feeling, and always a feeling that I experienced after a night of heavy drinking. So I decided that, the boozy evenings were not worth the desperately miserable days that followed. So it wasn't for me. And finally, I think the real reason that I continue to not smoke, not drink, not take drugs, not believe in casual sex is because, well, there's a lot of stuff I want to do. I suppose I'm a reasonably ambitious guy in a lot of ways. And you know what? I've managed to check a lot of things off the old list, but I still feel like there's a lot I've got to accomplish and a lot I want to do and see and learn and places I want to go. And, well, because I've got such a long to-do list during the time that I've got on this planet, I don't want anything slowing me down. And you know what? Like I said, other people might smoke pot and be creative and awesome and get things done. I'm not one of them. For me, all these things would slow me down, and quite frankly, I don't want anything slowing me down. You and I talk to Kevin Martin of Candlebox next. Thanks for hanging out.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The Dumbing Up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So you and I would talk to Kevin Martin of Candlebox in just a little bit. Right now, though, let's check out one of the songs that put Candlebox on the map back in the day.
Now maybe did I mean to treat you bad, yeah, but I did it anyway. And then maybe some would say your life was sad, yeah, but you lived it anyway. And so maybe.
Is this Kevin?
It certainly is.
Hey man, how are you?
I'm good, brother. How are you doing?
I'm really good. Now you've called. Thank you so much for making the time.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man.
I got to ask you, you're playing Sunday, September 18th at Caboo Del Mar with a very diverse
16th.
bill. It's Katy Perry,
16th.
Robert Plant, Wiz Khalifa, Slash, Alice in Chains, you guys, TLC, Jewel. I know the moment you finish up your set, I will be running to the other stage to see the guys in War play, because how many opportunities do you get to do that? If you had to pick a band that you maybe saw on the bill that you're looking forward to seeing, who do you suppose that might be?
Oh, I mean, sharing the stage with Robert Plant, I think is going to be the kind of the biggest thrill for me. That's always been kind of my inspiration as a singer. But I mean, there's just so many good bands. I'm just bummed we're not there for the whole weekend. Because the Friday and the Saturday, there's so many great bands. I mean, Caboo's such an interesting festival because it is so kind of eclectic. I call it the rich man's Coachella, because it's just so super nice. And I went last year to see the guys in live play, and I just kind of busted my agent's balls about getting us on it because I really wanted to play it.
Right. It's a great time. It's sort of like this beautiful, civilized way to see bands play. Like I'm in a hammock watching 311 going, this is a good time. This is really good. And you know what? I hate to sound snooty, but it is nice that all the toilets flush and the selection of food is better. At no point did like a 16-year-old kid throw up on my sneakers, and I was happy for that.
Nobody's really rolling on the molly it does, that's for sure.
But I mean, I have to tell you, the lineup is obviously insane for those 3 days. Everyone from Foo Fighters to Imagine Dragons, you guys, and the Robert Plant thing. I had a private bet with myself that you would say Robert Plant, just because it's interesting. when I first heard you back in the day, I didn't immediately link up Robert Plant in my mind with you. But having seen you a couple times, not only with Candlebox in more recent years and with the High Watts as well, you have like this Robert Plant-esque scream that just peels paint. And I never kind of picked up on it back in the day, but like it's insane. So that was going to be my bet with myself.
Well, thank you for the compliment. Yeah, he's definitely one of a kind, and I mean, God, who hasn't he influenced as a singer? You know, I mean, he's still to this day. I mean, I love how he revisits the Led Zeppelin stuff when he plays it live. You're sitting there going, I know this song. What is this song? And then you realize it's his reinventation or his reinventing of a classic Zeppelin track. And his voice is still so spectacular. And God, what a performer! He just, at his age, to be able to continue to do this and continue to awe an audience and hold them in his hand, it's really something special.
It'll be a bucket list kind of evening with that sort of performance. So,
yeah,
going back to what got you started, if you had to pick one moment, maybe it was a performance you saw on TV, or maybe it was a record, or maybe it was a song or a show that you went to. If you had to pick one moment that made you go, this is it, music has to be it for me, would you be able to narrow it down to that?
Oh, sure. It was Midnight Oil in Seattle on my 18th birthday. Peter Garrett just scared the absolute death out of me. I mean, he was just so commanding and such an impressive being on stage. I just decided, and I was doing a lot of drugs back then, and I woke up the next morning and said, that's it, I'm not doing drugs ever again, and I'm going to be the singer that I want to be, that I should be, and that was the defining moment for me. I mean, I grew up listening to great music, and my family was all musical, and I was surrounded by great music, but it wasn't until that moment that I realized that that's what I wanted to do.
That's what. See, I'd heard that, and I had a private bet with myself that it was true. Just because he's a guy who, there's something about, like, there's plenty of people that can get on stage and they can sing and they can play, and that's obviously amazing. But when I see a guy like you play, or when I think of a guy like Midnight Oil, homeboy, there's something magical that comes through the music when you really, really, really mean it. And that guy means every word and every note that he sings.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you're betting, you're two for two, so you need to hit Vegas.
Nice.
But I always tell bands, when they ask me what it is, or how can I, make it in this business, I'm like, you have to lose yourself 100% in the music. And if you're not, everybody's going to know it. And I think that what establishes great rock and roll from all other kinds of music is it's those, Zach from Rage Against the Machine and Robert Plant back in the day with Led Zeppelin, and Chris Cornell and Scott Weiland and all those great singers that just never cared what anybody thought. It was all about the music, and it was 100% their choice to deliver those songs the way that they felt they affected them and were affected by the music. And that's what I always tell young bands. If you're not doing that, you're wasting your time, because that's what it takes. You have to lose yourself. And of course, Eminem wrote that song, which was perfect for explaining to anybody what it is about rock and roll and why people are still so attracted to it.
I think that's it's beautifully put too, because I mean, you hear the same from people that are going to coach you in radio that are worth their salt will tell you, look, if it's not real to you, it won't be real to the person listening. And
that's true.
I think that is the same no matter what you're doing. It's sort of finding your voice and being true to it and waiting for the rest of the world to pick up on that. But yeah, no, that's really, really well put. Didn't you, again, am I making this up? You started playing drums, right? That was your first instrument?
Well, my first instrument was French horn, and then clarinet, and then flute, but I picked up drums when I was 10.
Hold on. All right. French horn, clarinet, flute, drums. I'm going to guess you probably know your way around maybe piano and guitar. How many instruments do you think you're up to?
10. I mean, I don't know.
Do you in this day and age ever pick up the French horn and, as opposed to doing a little heavy metal, practice a little weighty brass or something? Like, do you still play French horn?
No. The funny thing is the reason I put the French horn down after the first year is the thing was so damn heavy.
Right.
And I was a little kid, so. But yeah, I mean, I can still pick up a saxophone and play it, and it's. Like I said, music was in my family. My father was a jazz musician. My mother was a singer. My brother Brian played saxophone. My brother Dennis played guitar. My sister played flute. So it was always kind of around. And I just was looking for an instrument that allowed me to express my needs as an artist. And drums was really the one that I just fell into, and fell in love with instantly. And, I think a lot of great singers have all at one point been a drummer. Chris Cornell was a drummer. Steven Tyler was a drummer. The list goes on and on. And
there's that Grohl guy who's also at Kaboo.
Yeah, exactly.
Phil Collins as well. I think Sully from Godsmack. No, the list goes on. And I think that's an interesting thing about you.
Yeah, it doesn't. What it does is that gives you a rhythmic sense when you approach a song as a singer. Syllabically, rhythmically, and when you want to move in and out of a song, if you can play drums, I find that it just allows me to move my voice where I want it to go in between the groove or the pocket of the song.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I grew up playing drums as well, and I always had, again, sort of like a bet with myself about the way you kind of it was very interesting. The first time I heard you sing, I was like, it's not like he's rapping, but it's like he's very rhythmically aware. And then I think I read that you started or had played drums. I was like, that totally hangs together. And you toured with, like, Neil Peart was your guy, correct?
Oh yeah. That's how I learned to play drums. Was playing to Rush Records, and then we toured with him. So that was, even greater.
Yeah. What was? Did you get a chance to talk to him and be like, dude, you're the thing, you're the reason?
Yeah. Oh, sure. I mean, the great thing about those guys, and it's kind of who I am, the person that I am today, is that they were very instrumental in telling us you will see the same people on the way down that you see on the way up. And it's very important that you treat every band that you play with great respect. They would come to the dressing room and talk to us about our set list. We were with them for 16 weeks, so we got to know them really, really well. And Neil was just a lovely person that cared about what we were doing. They picked us to open that tour, and it opened the door for us for a lot of experiences. We went on to tour with Metallica that summer, and then Harry Rollins in September in Europe, and then we took the Flaming Lips out with us in the fall and of all of '94. So we had a very, very busy year, but so many different experiences in that year that I'll never forget, that I've held very close to my heart since then.
Yeah, and it sort of makes sense that you're on a bill like Kaboo when you talk about fitting comfortably on lineups that include everyone from Rush to Rollins to Metallica to the Flaming Lips. This is all very diverse, and yet somehow Candlebox makes perfect sense with all of them.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you.
No, it really sort of speaks to the depth of the music that you've created. Do you remember the first time you ever played San Diego?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the Casbah.
You know what? I've talked to a couple different bands playing Kaboo about their initial experiences of San Diego, and the Casbah has figured into an awful lot of them. Do you remember anything about that? Can you tell me some more about it?
Yeah, there are like 15 people there. It's that legendary venue there that everybody played in the 90s. I think, Stone Temple Pilots got their start out of there as I forget what the name of the band was prior to that. But, I remember going down there the first time I visited L.A. I went to see some friends that were living in San Diego, and they took me there, and I was like, wow, this is such a great venue. Mm-hmm. It made me feel like I was in a venue in Seattle because it was so kind of small and intimate and loud and cool. And I remember the people there that I didn't know that came to see us play were just so into what we were doing. And it felt like, wow, this is a real rock and roll town.
Right. Yeah, no, that's cool. I think when I talked to Art from Everclear about this, he was saying He's like, I'm pretty sure we got our record deal because of a show we played at the Casbah. I think like
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, some weasels came down to see him in San Diego, and that was like the beginning of everything for them. But I mean, I think you really hit on something important there. Is 15 people at your first show in San Diego, but you can pick up on the vibe because this is a music town. People really care about that stuff here.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, dude, I can't thank you enough for making time to hang with us today, and we cannot wait to see you Sunday, September 18th at Kabul Del Mar. It's going to be an awesome, awesome evening, and I will be with you running to try and catch as much of Robert Plant as possible.
Thanks, dude.